Alright, Hebda Matters, welcome back to another Friday video. I know this is getting uploaded on Saturday, so I am late to this one again. I apologize. Um, but we are here, we have the video, we are ready to go. So this video is dedicated to analyzing Etali, Primal Conqueror, from a commander standpoint, and we are going to attempt to follow the same format as with my previous analysis video on Belgavoth, um, although we may find that it is slightly different based on the needs of the card itself. Anyway, um, wasting any more time, let's get into it. So, Etali is a 7 cost red commander, 7/7 Elder Dinosaur with Trample. So he's a fairly expensive commander, but he hits really hard and he's got trample, which is already good. But we really want him for his ability when he enters, and it reads that when he does enter, each player exiles cards from the top of their library, so all opponents and yourself, until they exile a non-land card, and then you can cast any number of spells from these cards without paying their mana cost. So how this works is you pay the 7 mana, you cast Etali. As long as Etali resolves, he enters, and as long as the ability resolves, every player at the table exiles cards until they hit a non-land card, and then you can cast all of those spells for free in whatever order. Um, and but he does have a little bit more, so you can pay 9 and a green Phyrexian mana, so green or 2 life, to transform him into Etali Primal Sickness, which is an 11/11 dinosaur with trample and indestructible, which also has the ability that whenever it deals combat damage to a player, they get that many poison counters. So if you swing at this guy and he's not blocked, or if he's only blocked by a creature with 1 toughness, this just kills someone right off the bat. So very strong flip side, very strong front side. This card is really solid in that it can cater to different play styles. It's strong on both of its sides, and you really want to use both of its sides depending on the scenario, right? So its pros are it's strong, it has insane impact on a game, it's very swingy, and it's in great colors. It's in green and red, which are both incredible for ramping this guy out as quickly as possible and taking full advantage of his enter ability. Also being in green and red if you so choose to transform him. You can also take full advantage of the infect mechanic. Now, of course, this doesn't come without risk. Etali is a commander that you do kind of want to build your deck around him a little bit, and he doesn't have any innate protection in his front face form. He is indestructible when you flip him, but that costs 9 to 10 mana, and his front face, again costing 7, doesn't have any inherent protection. So he is vulnerable to counter spells and removal and all that stuff. But we are in green and red, so we do have a little bit of leeway there with protection. But either way, yes. So pros, very strong card, very impactful. Cons, he paints a target on your head, and he is vulnerable in his front face. However, this is overall an incredibly strong commander, with all things said and done, and the power level you can put this guy at, you can run this guy in casual pods all the way up to tournament level competitive if you so choose. So we are going to be discussing him in a higher level format from that perspective. Although you can certainly run this guy as the commander in a more casual Gruul aggro pod. Um, so our mission here for playing Etali in both a casual and high power setting, but especially in a high power setting, is to simply play your commander a lot. And what I mean by that is you want to get your commander's effects as much as humanly possible. We want to milk that enter effect because that enter effect essentially gives us 4 spells. Well, assuming you're in a pot of 4 players, it gets you 4 spells for free, one of which is one of yours. So you get to take advantage of one of those triggers, but then at the same time, you also get three more free spells from your opponents, which denies them value and gives it to you. So we really want to play the commander a lot. So the overall playstyle that we are going to go for, at least in this analysis, is what I call the Clone Wars, um, which is essentially we're going to use Etali's green and red colors to their full potential by ramping out Etali as quickly as humanly possible, and then immediately start creating more copies of Etali to trigger that enter the battlefield effect as many times as possible. Essentially, what we're doing is we're trying to milk our opponents for their cards while at the same time rushing through our own deck so we can slam as much value on the table as humanly possible without giving them any time to respond to us. And this usually has the effect of either hitting a combo within your deck and just winning the game outright, or simply overwhelming the pod with sheer value from the combined table. So there are three main themes of the deck that I just sort of skimmed over. So we're gonna go into a little bit more detail now. So what exactly those are? So the first thing is ramp. We're in green, we're in red. We have access to both permanent, long-term linear ramp, and we also have access to limited use high risk, high reward ramp in red, as well as the ability to use artifacts. And we're going to use all of these things. So if you want to use land ramp with, say, a cultivate, fetch basic lands from your library, get extra lands on the battlefield as quickly as possible. You absolutely want to do that. You want to use ritual effects in red to gain extra mana faster than you should, so that you can have a more swingy turn. You want to use all of the artifacts that let you skip ahead as many turns as possible in terms of your mana curve, so that you can rush Etali out the gate. Because the sooner you get Etali out, the less of an opportunity your opponents have to deal with him. Because again, his biggest weakness is that he is vulnerable. So we want to make sure that we push him out as quickly as possible. Now, once we do that, again, we want to start slamming his effects down. And I don't mean once. I mean we want to use spells that either double his effects or create copies of him to get those effects again. Now, something to keep in mind with spells such as Twin Flame is that the copies that you create will still be legendary creatures because they will be direct copies of Etali, which means that you will have to sacrifice one of one or more of those copies until you have one Etali left. Now, you can choose to keep a copy and get rid of the original Etali, but something to keep in mind with that is that while you might get a copy with haste that can then immediately swing, you will also then have to recast your commander to be able to get another loop going. And you can always do that. There's nothing to say that you can't. But that's more so a that's more so one of those scenarios where like it's dependent on the particular scenario. Like if you have an instant speed spell to create a copy of Etali and someone's targeting Etali with like a theft card to like take control of it, it wouldn't be a bad idea to create a clone of Etali and sacrifice the original Etali so that it's safe in the command zone instead of being lost to one of your opponents. Because, in all honesty, green and red were pretty vulnerable to that unless we have a protection spell in hand or it has like lightning groups on it or something. But we don't want to assume that that's going to be the case. Um, And then, assuming we have our ramp up and we're getting clones out, the third inevitable theme is going to be um, comboing. So, whether you're comboing with stuff in your own deck, which we do have a couple combos for, the food chain plus Squee slash Eternal Scourge combo is a classic. I highly recommend it. It is a little pricey, well, just but so is Manifold. But again, we are looking at this from a higher power perspective. And Food Chain is one that I do really recommend if you are looking to spend the money. Um, it essentially it just wins the game for you. So for the uninitiated, what Food Chain does is an enchantment that allows you to exile a creature you control at instant speed to add X men of any one color, where X is 1 plus the creature's mana value. You can only spend it on creature spells. So this is good for our deck because we run a lot of creature-based ramp, so we can tap our creatures for mana and then exile them to get extra mana to help us push out Etali. The other thing is that we run both Eternal Scourge and Squee. Now, these two are incredibly important because you can cast them from exile. So what this does is you exile Squee or Eternal Scourge to Food Chain to get 4 mana because they both cost 3. You use 3 of that mana to recast one of those from exile, and then you continuously exile and recast them until you just do that indefinitely until you have infinite mana, and then you play a Tali and exile into Food Chain infinitely to get infinite entry triggers, and you deck your opponents out. You just win the game. We do have a couple other combos that work like that, but the big thing to remember is that you're not only working with your own combos, you're working with the value pieces and combos from other players. In fact, you're working with all of the other players' combos and value pieces. So the important thing to remember is that you need to be a little bit flexible with your playstyle, aside from, again, just spamming the Etali entry button. As long as you're doing that, it's essentially just you play the game based on the environment, which is, again, this is a very fast and loose deck list, but so the main things are, again, combos, ramp, cloning. That's it. So the, oh, this is useless. Um, the cards specifically, we as we just went over, Food Chain and Sui are big for us. They win the game for us. Eternal Scourge also works. Another card that you really want to consider. I don't run it personally, but I do think it is a very valuable card to run, and I am considering it. Is Roaming Throne, because this just allows you to get 2 Etali triggers for every single Etali entry, so both for the original Etali and for any and all clones of him you make. It is kind of a win more card, but at the same time for 4, it can make games that are more ambiguous into games that swing entirely in your favor, depending on, again, it's all luck. And then another card that I do run that I think is incredibly important for anyone who runs Etali, especially as more of a combo commander than as an aggro commander, is Rianya. Now, what Rianya does is on every combat, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you create X tokens that are copies of another target creature you control. In our case, it's always going to be Etali, where X is 1 plus the number of instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. They gain haste, exile them again, and X ends up. So, how this works. You go to combat. Let's say you've cast 0 instant sorceries on your turn. You still make 1 copy of Etali. You get the Etali entry button. If you're on a Roaming Throne, you get 2. If you play 2 instants before your combat, you make 3 copies. And that's every combat. So the thing is, if you were to say clone Etali, and then you exile cards from opponents' libraries, and you happen to cast a couple of instants and sorcery spells from among those exiled cards, that all counts towards Rianya, because those are instants and sorcery spells that you have cast. So this card works incredibly well off of the whole cloning thing, because those clone spells count towards Rianya, and then each exile spell you cast has the potential to also count towards Rianya. So it can create this critical mass of Etali triggers. And yeah, sure, you only have to keep one of them, but you still get all the triggers, which is what we're looking for. So another combo that I want to go over is the classic Dual Caster Mage plus Clone combo. Now, Dual Caster Mage doesn't need any additional support for this deck list because this deck list wants to run a lot of clone spells. So you can just slot Dualcaster Mage in for funsies. What Dualcaster Mage does is it enters with instant speed, so you can flash it in on the stack, and when it enters, you can copy an instant or sorcery spell and choose new targets for the copy. Now, this is really important for cloning spells because when you cast a cloning spell targeting another creature, you can flash in Dualcaster Mage in response to your own cast, and then when it enters, you can choose to copy the cloning spell and have it target Dualcaster Mage. When you do that, the Dualcaster clone enters, and then it can copy the copy of the clone spell. So what you do is you end up getting an infinite number of Dualcaster Mage clones that all have haste. This just wins you the game. And all you need to do is throw Dualcaster Mage in because you're already running a ton of clone spells. So this is just another, you know, 2-card button win the game. I think it's incredibly important. Um, Runs very well in high level games. I don't know what else to say. Um, but for anyone who is kind of confused on the theme that I'm going for, it is fast and loose. Everything that I've gone over in this video so far is talking about how, you know, you want a general game plan at all times, which is early game, ramp out Etali, mid game, clone Etali, late game, just kill everything. This is much more, like for people who have watched my Valgavoth video, this is much more fast and loose. Because with Valgavoth, you wanted to ramp him out as soon as possible, right? Because he's still a high CMC commander. But after that, you wanted to whittle down your opponents with targeted removal and mill and discard so that you can steal important cards as you assemble your combo. With a Tali, you just want everything because you're not paying with your life for these spells. You're just getting them for free. So it doesn't matter what we exile, as long as we get the choice to play it and it benefits us, we play it. So our entire deck is, again, you can. I'm not running a deck list because it is. I think it's important that the deck list you create is. What's the best way to put this? It's like you gotta make the deck list in accordance with how you see the commander working, right? So this is how I make the commander. This is how I make my deck list. Is you ramp them out. You try to turbo Talia out to get ahead of the stacks and the rule and the counter spells, and then you just start laying on clone spells as many as you can to get a combo going or overwhelm your opponents. If you just run full, you know, full balls to the wall, like you know, abandon all anxiety or table politics. You're just in it. You're in it straight for the win. But of course, you can run things differently because Etali allows you to run a much more flexible game plan. You don't have to run clone spells. You can run high value creatures with aggro. You can run a ton of ramp. You could run buff spells because Etali transforms into an 11/11 that's essentially a Bladesteel Colossus. You can even run extra combats again for the transformed Etali. You can do really whatever you want with Etali, and he'll still perform to some level. So again, I just think that Turbo Clone Etali it's my personal cup of tea. But as long as you are adhering to the fast and loose strategy, it honestly does not matter how you run him because he's a red green commander that has a massive game breaking entry mechanic and transforms into a powerful endgame threat. It does not matter how you build him, as long as you build him in a way that can sustain his entry, you will be fine. But again, this is how I want to build him. So again, for those who watch the Valgavoth video and are confused, like, you know, at the lack of decisive clarity regarding this deck list. Again, it all comes down to the commander and the commander's needs. So Valgaboth is very strict with how you want to build your deck. You need to protect him. You need to ramp him out quickly, and in mono black that's very difficult to do. You need to be very specific with how you cast your spells because you can only do them on your turn, and you have to pay life to do so. And again, with Etali, all of these problems are absent. You need to ramp him out. He got 7. You're in green. You are for a shortage of spells because you don't have a lot of card draw on red and green. He exiles things for you, and you get opponent spells. You feel like you're not able to accrue a lot of value after you cast him, clone him. Like there's so much potential to build around him that it makes it difficult to nail down exactly how you're supposed to run him. And that's the thing. I don't really think you're supposed to run him any specific way. Again, there are ways to run him that are stronger than others. I definitely think that the like if any of you were to go and watch a competitive Magic Commander YouTube video, so anything like playing with power or play to win, I'm really struggling with the names here. And watch a commander video in a competitive commander format that features Etali, you will see that they like to clone him and they like to prioritize the entry effect. But again, if you're not running competitive, it's super flexible because you just do whatever, and Etali will deliver. You could run a deck that doesn't have anything to do with Etali and is just red green aggro and combats, and have Etali as your commander, and you will be fine. You will be fine. It might not be as strong as like a tournament competing deck, but it will work. The deck will function because it's red green and Etali is strong. Um, I know that might sound a little underwhelming and disappointing for the kind of video that this is, because I do like to try to be as detailed and nuanced as possible. But something I found when looking at Etali is that you can't be detailed with him. Like getting into the mindset of Etali and like playing Etali is the same kind of idea as like researching what makes him work, because he's all over the place. He's all over the place. You just want to slam him on the table, exile cards, cast as many good spells as you can, and just kill people. That's it. So I I don't know what to say. That I think that serves as the conclusion for my video. Um, Thank you all for sticking around as I present another neurotic rant. I did enjoy researching and putting this video together for Etali, even though, again, it looks much more low effort than Valgaboth. Um, but I do hope that this video provided some insight as to um, how to run Etali if you want to, or at least it provided insight into the idea that you don't need to run an ultra specific Etali list to have fun with Etali. Um, and yeah, I will see you guys next week for I think I'm doing Warhammer. But yeah, that's all.